take your medication, exercise, and diet. On 88.5 Sufra FM, tell a friend, call your neighbor. Casualty 911 is on.
12 minutes after the hour of 10 a.m., of course, between the hours of 10 and 11, of course, Casualty 911 is on. Inside this beautiful Monday, welcome inside another edition. Of course, with me this morning is your host, Fawn. She's here along with a guest. Good morning, Fawn. Welcome inside another edition.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. It's a wonderful Monday morning after a very long weekend. I hope everybody got some time to rest. It wasn't all partying and all, hyping up ourselves or working hard. Some of us worked hard over that long weekend as well. So this morning we're running a little bit late, but I am so very happy to know that our guests are with us here already. Today, after the long weekend, can you guess what we're going to be talking about? Welcome to all our listeners, regular listeners, and new listeners. We're jumping right into our topic this morning, and we will be talking about alcohol. We'll be talking about alcohol, and with us this morning is Mr. Wang Sonson of the Substance Abuse Advisory Council Secretariat, and also Dr. Melisa Francois. I will allow them to say a little bit more about themselves, a short, very, very brief intro, and then we will get into our discussion this morning where we'll be looking at World No Alcohol Day, the relevance of that observance, what impact we think it can have, and happenings, any activities planned, anything that is happening in terms of alcohol use and misuse, and also to talk about the impact that it has on us individually and as a population. So that is basically what our discussion will be about today. We will start off with Mr. Sonson. I know that you stepped out of a meeting to be here, and I'm ever so grateful for that. So, Mr. Sonson, could you just tell us? You've been on the program before, but for those who probably missed that show, you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at SACS, and then we will get into our discussion on alcohol and World No Alcohol Day.
Good morning, Fawn. I'd like to thank you for having me on this program once again. I'd like to say good morning to all your viewers and listeners, and also to Dr. Francois as well. My name is Wang Sonson, and I am the Deputy Coordinator at the Substance Abuse Advisory Council Secretariat. At the Secretariat, we are the Drug Observatory for St. Lucia, and one of our main functions is to see that there is demand reduction when it comes to licit and illicit substances in St. Lucia. As you said, World No Alcohol Day is being observed for the very first time in St. Lucia on the 2nd of October. That is this coming Wednesday. And this is an observance that has been, this is a day that has been observed worldwide from 2008. So this year, for the very first time, we at SACS decided that, with the Ministry of Health, decided that it was time that we in St. Lucia really observe this day because of the issues that we see on a daily basis that alcohol poses in our general population.
Okay, so Dr. Francois, could you just give us a brief description of what you do, where you work, and so on, and then I will get back to Mr. Sonson with a couple of questions.
Okay.
Can you hear
Good
me?
morning to everybody. Mr. Sonson. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can go ahead.
Okay. Good morning to everybody. Morning, Miss Fawn and Mr. Sonson, and all of the other viewers or the listeners and viewers. I am Dr. Melisa Francois. I'm an internal medicine specialist. I'm currently in the position of senior registrar at St. Jude Hospital. I'm very passionate about community outreach when, well, in terms of prevention and lifestyle changes and how that can impact our population. And of course, I've become a member of the Alcohol Technical Working Group in order to be able to achieve some of the objectives of that committee and group.
Okay, wonderful. So you mentioned the alcohol technical working group, and I'm sure Mr. Sonson will tell us a little bit more about that as he um, speaks to us about the observance of World No Alcohol Day. So, Mr. Sonson, you started off by saying SACS is responsible, and you talked about illicit and illicit. So, when we talk about licit and illicit, could you break that down for us and tell us where alcohol fits into, which category it fits into?
Well, when I say licit and illicit, you could just change it around and say legal and illegal substances. So alcohol, as we know, is a legal substance in St. Lucia. um, Persons are able to buy alcohol and consume alcohol freely. There is no penalty, or there are no laws which forbids persons from consuming or buying alcohol in St. Lucia. So alcohol is a licit or legal substance.
And some people might ask then, why is it legal if we think that it's harmful?
Yeah, well, that is a very good question, and I think it is a substance that has been legal in Saint Lucia for a very long time, and my take on it is that probably what we need to start doing, and you mentioned the alcohol working group, technical working group, which is a group which was formed in May, I believe, of this year, and it has a cross-sectional membership from various government departments and civil organizations such as the National Youth Council. And the aim is really to educate persons when it comes to the harmful effects of alcohol abuse or harmful alcohol consumption practices. And we want to do this by education. We also want to do this by partnering with civil society groups. And we also want to look at legislation as well. So, for example, you ask, why is it legal? It is legal, and we know that when it comes to children up to the age of 16 can be served alcohol. So the Alcohol Technical Working Group, we would like to cause legislation to be reviewed to bring that Liquor License Act in in alignment with other legislation such as the Youth Justice Act, which has the age of a child to 18 years old. So if a child is 18 years old, we think that the legislation needs to be reviewed because our children need to be protected when it comes to alcohol and alcohol consumption.
Okay. So, in terms of alcohol consumption or on the part of the youth, do you think that the change in legislation, how would it impact the consumption? How do you foresee that impacting the consumption
Well,
of alcohol of the youth?
like with everything else, legislation, there can be new legislation, but enforcement would have to be a priority, because if the legislation is not being enforced, more than likely it will not have that impact. But if it is being enforced when it comes to persons having to show ID when I'm purchasing alcohol, um, and whatnot. Even the vendors have to be held responsible for the way they sell the alcohol. I think we will see a shift. Maybe it might not be immediate, but over time we will see a shift in consumption of alcohol amongst our younger persons.
Yes, particularly when we link that with the education that will be ongoing, right?
Yes, definitely, definitely.
So, You also mentioned at the beginning of your when you joined us that World No Alcohol Day has not been observed in St. Lucia prior to this year.
Yes.
Why did the council think that it was a good idea to start to observe World No Alcohol Day?
Well, I believe it's something that for a while now the Secretariat have been wanting to do, but because of probably a few things, probably staffing level might be one of them where persons we have been observing like World No Tobacco Day, for example, but to have the resources to really push out that campaign. Yes, we can say it's World No Alcohol Day, but we really want to have activities to go along with it. And I don't believe that there was adequate staffing to really push it in the direction that we want to push it. As you mentioned earlier, we have a alcohol technical working group now. We have persons on board, and I came to the department about a year ago, and that portfolio, I have been responsible for that portfolio, and with responsibility for that portfolio, I really wanted to make it something that not just in name. And let me just say that it will not just be for World No Alcohol Day, but this is something that we want to be sustained throughout the year. So we will be going out, whether it's outreach, community outreach programs, canvassing, media, whatever it be. You will be getting messaging when it comes to the harmful effects of alcohol consumption. And the theme for this year is raising awareness, raising awareness on the impact of harmful alcohol consumption. So this is what we want to do. It is not us going out there and tell people don't drink alcohol. We are telling you that you have to make informed choices when it comes to alcohol consumption, and that's why we use harmful alcohol consumption practices.
And thank you. And in order for them to make those informed choices, they would have to know what are the risks associated with alcohol misuse. And for that, I would invite Dr. Francois to speak to us a little bit about some of the risks associated with consuming large quantities of alcohol in the short term as well as the long term, because some people tend to think that they can hold their alcohol, so as long as they don't feel very much affected by the alcohol that they have consumed. In St. Lucia we have that term that somebody is a two sab, so they can just keep drinking and they don't really feel any effects. So is there anything really happening? What are those risks associated in the short term, in spite of the fact that people may not actually feel any difference in their body? So short, mid, and long term risks, Dr. Francois.
Okay, so I just want to start off by just establishing what what exactly constitutes heavy alcohol use or at risk alcohol use. So in patients without comorbidities, that is persons who do not have hypertension, diabetes, heart issues, stroke, or any other illnesses, most of the guidelines established by the United States Federations for Alcohol Consumption states that in a female, you can drink no more than two alcoholic drinks per day. And in a male, it's one alcoholic drink per day. Sorry, in males, it's
I
two
think it's
alcoholic drinks
vice
per day,
versa,
and in
yes.
females, it's one. Yeah, one alcoholic drink per day. So we exclude from these groups pregnant patients, persons who have liver issues, persons who have pancreatic issues, because it would be advisable none at all. So when you drink beyond these established guidelines, it's when you're considered at risk. So I reiterate, it would be females more than 1 drink per day and males more than 2 drink per day. You already at risk. And at risk for what? There's a long list of items and a lot of pathologies that you're at risk for. So you have cancer of the neck, the throat, liver cancer, breast cancer. You're at risk for liver pathologies, including liver failure, liver cirrhosis, inflammation of the pancreas, pancreatic cancer. You're at risk for cardiovascular disease, including hypertension, heart attack, stroke. There's an increased risk for violence towards others and to self harm, including suicide. There's risk for accidents and trauma. There's also risk for hematological abnormalities like bleeding disorders, gout, kidney problems. There's also an inherent psychological risk associated with alcohol usage, like depressive disorders, anxiety, psychosis, and schizophrenia. So there's a long list of organs that can be affected from literally from your head onto your toes. So once we go beyond these guidelines, you're at risk. And these are the things that can occur. So, bearing that in mind, we hope that people can make more informed decisions about alcohol ingestion, not in as much as the amount and the frequency.
Okay. So it's interesting that you talked about the guidelines as it relates to female and male consumption. And I think Mr. Sonson might want to jump in there with the World Health Organization's point of view in terms of alcohol consumption, because that is very interesting. We know that different agencies have different guidelines. So, Mr. Sonson, would you like to say a little about the World Health Organization stance on alcohol consumption?
Well, according to the World Health Organization, alcohol is responsible for over 3 million deaths annually worldwide. So that is a lot. There is the World Health Organization also has its global strategy, which we at Substance Abuse and working with the alcohol working group, we will try to implement some of the goals of that strategy in St. Lucia. And this is why we started off with the technical working group so that some of the recommendations from the World Health Organization can be implemented in St. Lucia. And I spoke earlier of legislation, not just the Liquor License Act, but we also have to look at the Road Traffic Act when it comes to drink driving, and we also need to protect our most vulnerable populations. And so we will be using the guidelines of the World Health Organization. We will be putting in place programs and activities that will better help us to deliver the services that are required to assist in the reduction in alcohol consumption on our island, and have persons be more responsible when it comes to the alcohol consumption practices.
We'll speak a little bit more about how alcohol consumption affects not just the individual. And I want to go back to Dr. Francois. Dr. Francois, you know, culturally, we hate all the time people talk about consuming alcohol to relieve their stress. So when you spoke about depressive disorders and the psychological aspect of it, people are actually using alcohol to deal with stress, as they say, to cope with their stress. So what would you say to those people who think that that is actually beneficial and helping them?
Okay. So what I would say, there are at least 6 stages in alcohol intoxication. The first stage is what we call the subclinical, where you feel fine and you don't really feel any actual effects of the alcohol. You drink a little more and you go to the second stage, which is the euphoria and excitement. And a lot of people, that's what a lot of people would describe as feeling tipsy in our regular vernacular. So a lot of persons do not notice that alcohol does have an effect on your psyche. And while when you drink alcohol, there's a temporary euphoria and excitement. It's only short lived. And that effect, it doesn't take away your problems. It doesn't take away whatever issues that you have to deal with. It's just really a distraction. And the benefits of alcohol, it's very limited. A lot of the times, these same benefits, these antioxidant benefits, you can get it just from drinking some juice, some grape juice. So really and truly, there's almost little to no benefit from alcohol ingestion. In fact, the risks way outweigh the benefits.
And what if people will want to drink? They could continue to want to drink. What can be done, if anything, to reduce the harmful effects of drinking alcohol or overconsumption of alcohol?
Okay. Okay, so in order to reduce the risk of the all of the illnesses that I mentioned that is associated with alcohol use, it would be to not fall into the bracket of heavy alcohol use. It requires the person, the individual, to regulate the amount of alcohol that they intake and the frequency or the pattern. So, like I said, moderate alcohol use has a definition. So, it's typically defined in females less than 3 drinks on any given occasion and less than 7 drinks per week. And in the male, it's less than 4 drinks in any occasion or per day and less than 14 drinks per week. And we have a little clause here for the 65-year-olds and older. So the 65-year-olds and older, whether they're male or female, it changes. It's typically moderate alcohol use would be defined as less than 3 drinks per occasion and less than drinks per week. So when you go beyond that is when you increase your risk. So to avoid these risks, it's more.
I think we're having a bit of difficulty with the connection, the internet. So we missed part of what you just said, Dr. Francois. The last part of what you said, I think we missed it due to our connectivity issues. If you
In
could
terms
just,
of the limits.
the 65 and over.
Okay. Hello. Yes, so the 65 and older would be just like the females. So 65 years and older, it's less than 1 drink per day, less than 7 drinks per week. So this would really put you into the category of moderate alcohol ingestion. So moderate drinking, and which has a lower risk compared to the heavy drinking, which is what we typically try to avoid.
And those risks, as we mentioned earlier, those risks are actually associated with the individual. So whoever is drinking, they're at risk. But out there in the community, there are others who are at risk even though they consume no alcohol. So let's talk a little bit about the impact that overconsumption and misuse of alcohol can have on other members of society. And Mr. Sonson mentioned part of it. He's mentioned a few things in terms of the Road Traffic Act, but I think we need to get a little bit more rich, the very nitty gritty of it in terms of not just talking in general, because people's lives have been significantly impacted by people, others who have consumed alcohol heavily. There are people who have life-changing injuries, people who have died. And if we could speak a little bit more about, probably, Dr. Francois, what you have seen at the hospital, if anything, and how it affects other people who might be, in terms of, for example, other people who might be awaiting medical services, who may have to be put maybe to wait because you have accident victims coming in caused by people who might have consumed too much alcohol. I don't know if you would like to speak a little bit about that, Dr. Francois.
Okay. So, I mean, in the experience that I've had on my ward, we typically admit patients who have alcohol misuse disorders. And aside from what I mentioned with in terms of the individual, I see.
I think we've lost Dr. Francois.
Yeah. Mhm.
So,
Hello?
okay, go ahead.
Yes. So I was saying that in my experience with dealing with these patients who have the alcohol misuse disorders, I see an impact firstly on the family, the loved ones of these patients. Alcohol is not free. So a lot of the times it takes a financial toll on the families of these patients, their children, their spouses and partners. um, it also affects them because it has a risk of violence. And we know that with alcohol ingestion, there's a risk of increased aggression. And we have cases of domestic violence within the families of patients who have alcohol misuse disorders. We also see it in neglect because a lot of the times when somebody has an alcohol issue, the family tends to reject them and they tend to be isolated. So they don't really have that love and that support that would get them out of it. Instead, they're isolated and nobody cares for them, and then they fall deeper into the habit. I see an impact on the community because when somebody drinks alcohol, the risk of accidents and trauma, hurting others, that's a real risk. And we've seen that in the last year, in this year alone, we've had so many cases of motor vehicular collisions. Who's to say it might be alcohol related? Um, and of course, there's an impact on the government because a lot of these people, they're not able to work and provide for themselves. So it kind of puts a burden on social services to be able to provide for them in terms of their medications and their basic needs. So it's really an impact not only on the person, but all of us are affected in one way or the other, their families, the community, even the government.
Thank you, Dr. Francois. And Mr. Sonson, in terms of Dr. Francois made mention of probably it could have been alcohol induced accidents, but we really don't know. So, what is there anything in the works that would allow us to be able to detect when people are under the influence of alcohol and they're involved in road traffic accidents?
Okay, well, just drawing if you just draw an inference from the times that these collisions occur and what is happening at the time that it occurs, so you would mostly find that majority of these acts of these collisions or fatal accidents occur like on a weekend or holiday when there is high social activities taking place. But speaking about being able for a fact to say that persons who are under the influence or alcohol contributed to this collision, this is something I believe that, well, I know that the legislation is in place in St. Lucia, but I'm not sure whether the tools needed, like the breathalyzers, for instance, are available to the police. And reading the legislation, I believe that it is too onerous on the police to be able to prove that someone has been driving whilst under the influence of alcohol. So that is why I said when it comes to legislation, not only the Liquor License Act, but also the Road Traffic Act needs to be reviewed as well. I think that it is imperative that when it comes to drink driving, that these measures are in place because as Dr. Fosso rightly says, it is not the person who's driving drunk is the only one who suffers. There might be an innocent family just driving home from church or going to a beach activity or family activity. And here's this person who's under the influence of alcohol, who shouldn't be operating a vehicle on the road and he crashes into that family, and the effects of that can change the lives of every member of that family forever, and even the life of that person who actually was driving whilst under the influence of alcohol. So this is very serious, and Dr. Francois made a very good point that it also affects every single St. Lucian, because at some point you would want to go to you would have reason to go to an emergency room, and the wait time and whatnot, because you might have to wait because there's someone who's involved in a very serious collision who needs attention before you. There is stress on our medical workers because of the high levels of trauma they have to deal with persons who are seriously injured coming in and out of the emergency room, as well as the EMTs and the police officers who are always going on these gruesome collision scenes. So this is something I believe that the laws are there, as I said, probably they need to be revisited and then enforced to ensure that we are able to curb on the number of collisions. Recently, it was in the media that insurance companies have decided that some of them will not be insuring vehicles anymore, motor insurance anymore. And if we don't do anything about it, those of us that are drivers, it's already happening. We are all going to be affected by that decision. So the solution, we all know what the solution is. So it is just the powers that be to get to the bottom of it and put the legislation in place and ensure that there is enforcement so that we are safer on our roads.
Thank you, Mr. Sonson. Now we're talking about people who probably think that they are just recreational drinkers. So, as you mentioned, the social activities happening and they don't perceive themselves to have a drinking problem. So, how do we get people like that to acknowledge that they have an issue, and what treatment is actually available for those people?
Well, it's as I said, it's awareness, it's education. That is the way that we can go. It's just to continue to educate persons, and this is what we are going to do in the month of October when it comes to observance of World No Alcohol Day. We are going to do a number of outreach programs and education and awareness programs with selected groups of persons.
Would you care
And,
to give us an idea of what areas at least you would be having those sessions in, if not the specific groups?
okay, so we would be in the north. We will be in the Babono area. We are also going to be on the west coast, which is ancillary canneries and Soufre. The reason for that is we at SACS we usually have several campaigns, and 2 months ago we had the about 2 months ago we had the World No Tobacco Day, and we had outreach programs with persons on the west coast, on the east coast, sorry. So we have decided to balance it out. But apart from that, we continue to go into our schools and bring deliver those programs to the young people, because if we can start with them, then later on in life it will be less of an issue for us. So as I said, we're doing Babono, Soufre, and canneries, and we will have both awareness programs and outreach programs in the community. So we'll be working with organizations such as the Soufre Foundation, Village and Town Council, and we'll also be working with the Ministry of Infrastructure as well. So these are some of the things that we will be doing.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
And Dr. Francois, in terms of treatment, or Mr. Sonson, whoever would
Oh,
like to take that question, in terms of treatment, what is available to those who have a problem with drinking?
okay. So our sole treatment facility on island
Okay.
is the Turning Point Rehabilitation Center. So this is where we usually direct persons who have indicated that they need assistance, because this is the sole facility on island to assist persons. Where possible, we have some staff with the rehabilitative experience at SACS. And when we do our outreach programs, if needed, we have one-on-one intervention with persons who have indicated that they need the assistance. But generally, persons are directed to the Turning Point Rehabilitation Center.
Okay. Dr. Francois, would you like to add anything to that? When you get patients at the hospital, if they are not referred, is there anything that can be done? Because some of them don't want to go to Turning Point. So, is there any other interventions that are available through the hospital that you are aware of?
Yeah, I just would like to start by saying, in a nutshell, that treatment of alcohol misuse disorder is centered around getting the person to want to change. So it has to be, the person has to get to the point where they can decide and make a choice that I am not going to drink because it's not beneficial to me. And since it's a lifestyle disease, it really requires a lot of psychosocial interventions. And at hospital, what we usually do is a referral to the psychiatrist, because he's more trained in providing those motivational interviews, those cognitive behavioral therapies, and with obviously with the support of the family, to get the individuals to the point of recognizing that it's not beneficial to them and they want to change. It's obviously a very taxing and difficult process, because a lot of people are in denial and they don't realize that they have a problem. But we do offer some counseling with the psychiatrist to hopefully get persons to that point. There are some medications that have been approved by the FDA for treatment of alcohol disorders, but it's usually used more so in the moderate to severe cases. But the first step is always getting the patient to be on board and willing to change. So the first step is always getting them on board, and then possibly getting medications as well.
Okay. So it means that we need to do some work in terms of the availability of services for treatment as well, right? So apart from the education and the changes to legislation and so on, treatment is definitely very important. So when they get out of Turning Point and they get back into the same environment, it means that it becomes very, very challenging to maintain that sobriety. And it would be nice, I think, at some point to have somebody who has gone through that to actually explain to us what it feels like. But since we don't, I will go to Mr. Sonson and ask you, in terms of education at the schools, yes, we want to establish good lifestyle habits from very early. Do you have a sense from your interaction with the students? And I'm thinking they are mainly secondary school students, or are you involved in
Yes, mainly
primary
secondary.
secondary school?
Yeah.
Do you have a sense from your interaction as to whether they consume alcohol, maybe in what quantities? I don't know if you have any survey data that you can lean on, but in terms of your interactions with the various students, what sense do you have in terms of their consumption and how they get it, and maybe the frequency, the quantity?
Okay. So unfortunately, we don't have data, but we are substance abuse with the assistance of OAS CCAD, Organization of American States. We are in the process of doing a survey for students between the ages of 13 to 17. And it's just a lifestyle survey to see the vulnerabilities when it comes to, and it's not just alcohol, it's all substances. So hopefully we will get some form of idea as to the frequency and the scope of usage amongst children of that age. But it's not solely school based. It's children in and out of school between the ages of 13 to 17. Speaking with the kids, it's usually through friends, those peer pressure, those who do consume not just alcohol but other substances like NPSs, new psychoactive substances. It's usually through peer pressure and just want to experiment because children at that age they like to experiment, they like to be in with the in crowd. So hopefully after this survey is completed, we'll have a better idea. But in the future, what we want to do, we want to do a survey specifically, an alcohol survey, targeting both the younger population and the adult population. So in time, these are one of the things that working with the alcohol technical working group that we would like to implement.
I think that would be a very good baseline from which you can see, get a better picture of what's happening on the ground, and
Yes,
to determine how, what sort of intervention and how to do your programming and that sort of thing. Now it's
yes,
very
definitely.
interesting that sometimes when I speak to young people one on one, they don't consider certain drinks to be alcohol because I guess of the nature of the drink. If it's fruity, if it has a fruit flavor and that sort of thing, they tell you no, it's not an alcoholic beverage. So education is so very important, and that raising of the awareness is so very important because some people are consuming alcohol and not actually, I don't know, I don't want to say realizing, they're not acknowledging that it is alcohol because of the nature of the drink, and I suppose because they figure that the level of um the percentage of alcohol is so low that it just really does not count. So you think of things like rum and the hard liquor as alcohol, but other things not.
Yeah,
Have you
I guess.
encountered that in your interactions out
Well, unfortunately, you even have parents who would serve a shandy to a child, and a shandy has a certain level of alcohol in there. So we have to realize this is how it begins. So we start light, and then eventually they go to the more hardcore drinks. Where the percentage is all 40% and whatnot. So unfortunately, we even have parents serving alcoholic beverages to their kids, and I guess in our culture we see that as just a shandy. That's not alcohol, but it does have a percentage of alcohol in there. So this is something that we see, and I guess is, as we said, it's education, and not just educating the parents, but educating the persons who sell those drinks to our children as well.
there? Yes, indeed. And culturally, we tend not to maintain that one and two drink. I think most people would laugh at that guideline. They say, really? Because culturally, people go out on an evening and the announcer said the whole case. So Ulan is saying some people drink a whole case and
Yes, it's
they
true.
don't think it's an issue. So I don't know. I don't know that phrase. Big belly season. Any of you familiar with that phrase? What's that big belly season about? I don't know.
Mhm.
All right. So education, as we said, is very important, and we would hope that it would actually reach people, would actually internalize and make it. We know that behavior change is very difficult, and we hope that this will be very helpful in terms of turning around our situation as it relates to alcohol use and misuse in
Just one note on I just got from my colleague, one of my colleagues, that we have an average age of first use of 10 years old in St. Lucia. So children actually the average age is 10 years. That's when they start to
that's
consume
quite
alcohol.
young. But I think some
Yes.
of us can think of even younger when we have certain traditional celebrations. You know, the children
Yes.
are introduced maybe at 7 and 8.
Yes.
Yes,
Hmm.
and that is quite young, and it would mean that it would not just be that's the introduction, and it would mean that the consumption would increase thereafter, probably.
Yeah.
Oh, one of our listeners is saying that they believe it should be 21, but I think that's the American thing. So as
Yes, it is.
Mr. Sonson
Yes, it
said,
is.
we really want to try to align the legislation that we already have. So if you're an adult at 18, then
Yeah.
at least to bring it in line with 18 years, because 21 might be pushing it. Huh?
At 18 years you can vote. So
You can vote and you're an
yeah.
adult.
Yeah.
So putting in implementing 21 years, I think that's pushing our luck a little bit. I don't know what Mr. Sonson thinks of that, or what Dr. Francois might think of that.
Well, I just think that we should have all legislation in line, especially when it comes to the age of a child. And as I said, age of a child in the Child Justice Act is 18 years old. It moved from 16 to 18 years old. And I think that the Liquor License Act needs to be aligned with that age of a child, which is 18. In the Liquor License Act right now, children at the age of 16 can be served alcohol. So they can go to a bar and purchase alcohol and so forth. And we know that um, the habit is that children would, whatever age, would go to a shop and buy alcohol for their parents and whatnot. And there is no oversight. There was a few years ago, there was a video circulating on social media of a boy that I know personally, and at the time he must have been about 8 years old. It was during the carnival season, and here he was at a legal licensed premise in Rodney Bay at 2 a.m. He was actually falling asleep inside that liquor license premise. You know, he wasn't there for parent or anyone. So it is legislation that has to be enforced, and persons must be held accountability, whether it's a bar owner, whether it's a parent, for not adhering to the legislation which is enforced.
And I suppose it would be much easier to enforce the requirement for an ID card when you have it at 18,
Yes.
because everybody is supposed to have an ID card at age 18.
Yeah.
So that should make it a little less challenging for the vendors. Uh, but education, as you said, for the vendors is very important, because we know that some of them are very well aware that the people that they are serving alcohol are below the legal age and really should not be served with alcohol. So
And even serving alcohol to someone who's already visibly intoxicated. So if someone is already visibly intoxicated, you shouldn't be serving alcohol to that person, because that person may end up injuring themselves, causing harm to themselves or to other individuals. So we have to be careful, you know?
that is very important. That is very important. So as we continue our work with alcohol and the misuse of alcohol, I hope there will be a lot more that can be done. Hopefully next year, Mr. Sonson, we can get an update, and in that update, we will see that progress has been made, and things are changing on the ground. In as much as we know that things don't happen very quickly sometimes, but we do hope at least to see some progress. A little progress is much better than just being stagnant. So if we
Yes.
are working diligently towards making those changes, I hope that next year we can have a nice little update that at least, we can see something, whether it's with the legislation or in terms of feedback on the education that is being done and so on. So as we come towards the end of the program, I invite you to share any last words that you have with the public. Dr. Francois, would you like to start off, and then Mr. Sonson can close it off, or whichever way you'd like?
Okay, I think I can start off. I just want the message to be to the listeners that the most important thing about alcohol consumption is the amount and the pattern. We have clear guidelines, which is research based, evidence based, to show that there's a limit to what provides, well, to a limit to which higher than that poses a risk. And people should be self-aware, and we all should love ourselves and take care of ourselves by, avoiding unnecessary risks. And if we are clear that alcohol provides very little benefit to our health, in fact, it puts us at risk for all the long list of disorders. It's just better to avoid it altogether, or if you cannot avoid it, moderation. And I just want to reiterate the limits, like as a closing remark. The females, less than one drink a day, less than three drinks on any given occasion, less than seven drinks per week. And the males would be less than two drinks per day, less than four drinks on any occasion, less than 14 drinks per week. And the people who are 65 years and older, we know they're at higher risk for cardiovascular disease, shouldn't have, it should be less than one drink per day, less than seven drinks per week. So that really counts as moderate alcohol use. Obviously, abstinence is better, but moderation is the next best option.
Okay. So I heard you say less than one, and I think you probably mean just one, because less than one would be zero.
The, it goes to show, it says less than one because more than seven drinks per week, seven drinks per week would be every day. So it would be less than a drink per day for the week, if you
Okay.
understand what I mean.
Okay. So when you explain it like that, it yes, I do understand a little better.
Not drinking daily. That's what I mean to say. No daily drinking.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for that clarification. And Mr. Sonson, any parting words for our
Okay.
listeners and viewers?
Yes, I was listening to Dr. Francois, and I know the World Health Organization stated that no amount of alcohol
No
is
amount, right?
a safe level of alcohol.
That's what I
But
was looking for from you earlier, Mr. Sonson.
yeah. So but what I want to say, I know that it is our culture. That's what we say. Alcohol is the culture, and in this month of October, although we are observing World No Alcohol Day, it's also a month where a lot of alcohol consumption will be taking place as well, because it's the month that we celebrate Creole Heritage Month, and Journée Creole is a major part of that activity. So I'm urging persons to just be aware of the choices that you make. Spread the word on that October 2nd is World No Alcohol Day, and we are observing it in St. Lucia. And if you plan on drinking during the month of October, especially with the festivities coming up, do it in moderation. Know that whatever you do will not only affect you, it will affect other people around you. Dr. Francois said about how you can be affected directly when it comes to the medical issues. Alcohol also affects productivity in our nation. It also affects productivity greatly because you see a number of young, able bodied persons becoming slaves to alcohol, and they are not productive in our society. So, if we can spread the message, um, anyone who needs that help, see how best you can help them when it comes to getting off of alcohol and being alcohol free, or not being addicted to alcohol. I would urge every single person listening to help that person, because it affects us all in the long run. So once again, I thank you, Fon, for allowing us the opportunity to be here on this program to share the plans when it comes to the observance of alcohol, no alcohol day, and also what we are doing with the alcohol technical working group. And I hope in the future we'll be back to update the public as to the progress that we have been making. I thank you.
Thank you so much to you, Mr. Sonson, and you, Dr. Francois. Thank you for being here. It was, I think, a very good discussion. And as you said, Mr. Sonson, we're looking forward to the updates next year.
Definitely.
And thank you to our viewers and our listeners for tuning in. We will be back here with you next week, Monday, on Casualty 911.